Hello and welcome to my porch. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel typically sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Today, obviously, I'm on the porch, so it's not a recipe. Today, I am answering questions. I reached out on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube asking for questions that I would answer to celebrate having reached my 1,000 subscribers benchmark. So I have reached 1,000 subscribers. Thank you all very much if you are subscribed to my channel. I truly appreciate it. And it's just surprising to me that it has grown as quickly as it has. I figured I'd be plodding along, but a lot of that I have to thank a few people for. First of all, obviously Paul, my partner, who not only was supportive but had bought all of the equipment that I am using that helps me to create these videos in the way that I do. And that is a question I get later, so I'll go more into that then. Also, first up is Bree from Balancing Life with Bree. She is the first one who came to me and said, you really need to do a channel. And I think maybe it was because I kept sending her recipes thinking she'd enjoy them and maybe share them on her channel, and maybe she got tired of me pawning off my recipes onto her. I don't know, but I can see why she would. But anyways, she is the main motivator for me having started this channel. So Bree, thank you very much for pushing me past my anxiety and getting me to do this channel. Second is Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel. And she was also a very big cheerleader early on. And I told her that Bree wanted me to do a channel, and she was like, oh yeah, you need to do a channel, definitely do a channel. Their encouragement really pushed me forward, as well as Dee from Dish with Dee. Her group on YouTube and the Facebook group were all very encouraging, and in fact, they helped me to name this channel because we were talking about what name I would give the channel, and she was Dish with Dee, and I said, oh, maybe Recipes with Roy, and hence the name was born. So Dee and the group over there, we have you to thank for the name. Also, more recently, are my friends Kim from A Girl and Her Phone and Sandy from Let's Get Fit with Sandy. They have been really excellent supporters of mine, pushing my channel, asking their subscribers to jump on over here. So I truly appreciate everything that you guys have done as well. So this is already going to be a long video, I believe. I got about 26 questions. Well, I got over 26, but I was able to combine some of them were repeats. So we won't be going over more than that, but those will probably take a while. So buckle in. We're going to celebrate 1,000 subscribers getting to know me better. Now, I grouped these questions so they kind of made sense. I started off, let me get my paper. See, I printed them all out. So I started off with all the weight loss questions. Then I go into the more personal questions. Then I go to food, and finally YouTube. So they're going to be in little sections that hopefully will flow from one to another. So the first question is, I'd love to hear your story and the biggest challenges you had to overcome, which is different for everybody. Which is very true. Everyone's journey is different, as I always say in my videos, Don't follow the recipe the way I do it if there's something in there you don't like. It's your journey. You have to do what you need to do. But to go into my story, some of you, if you watched my introduction video where I also introduced the 0 point cream cheese, a lot of the story is there. So I'll just briefly go over it. I've had weight issues ever since I hit my teens. I had lost weight for quite a while. And when I was living in New York, I was extremely thin. My mother thought too thin because I was working as a messenger, and rather than using the tokens for the subway, I would walk everywhere because I was a very fast walker. Not so much these days, but we'll get into that too. So anyway, I was thin for a while and then started putting the weight back on, taking the weight off. You all know the struggle. Back and forth, it's a yo-yo. And about it was about 5 years ago, because it was before, just when my neuropathy and myopathy started. I went to see a hypnotist, thinking, okay, that's gonna have to work. Something's gotta work to keep me on track. And so I went to a hypnotist. That helped for a little while. But I think it was more like the placebo effect, where it's like I believed it for a while, so it worked. And then when I chose not to believe it anymore, it didn't work. So I lost, I think, about 40 pounds at that point. And I was okay with that, but wanting to lose more, but it wasn't going anywhere. So then I started gaining the weight back, and then I reached a high of 307 pounds. And once I saw that I was over 300, I was mortified that I'd let myself get that far. So I knew I had to do something, but I couldn't figure out what to do because it seemed like I couldn't sort it out in my head to get it committed. So the next choice was to go for weight loss surgery. And someone did ask, did you exercise or have surgery to lose the weight, or was it just diet? It was just diet, because I went for the weight loss surgery, and here in Massachusetts, I don't know how it is everywhere, but you had to go through like 6 weeks or 8 weeks of a program to prepare. And what they want you to do is to start eating the way you're going to have to eat after you lose the weight. You're going to have to eat smaller portions, smaller bites, and chew more slowly to digest with your shrunken stomach. So I went through that program, and just by following those 3 rules that they gave me, I lost too much weight to get the surgery. But I think it was a happy accident that happened, although it wasn't really an accident. I was doing my best to commit to eating the way I would have to eat for the rest of my life. But then it started to creep back up after the holidays. The holidays, I kind of like let myself relax a little bit too much, and that relaxation carried me through for a little bit longer. So I started gaining the weight back. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to Weight Watchers. I have to do something. With my neuropathy and myopathy, it was getting extremely difficult for me to get up from chairs, to walk, to move really much at all. Even getting out of bed in the mornings was sometimes a challenge, depending on how my muscles were feeling that day. So if for no other reason than to make movement easier, I knew I had to lose some of the weight. So I decided I was going to go to Weight Watchers. I had done it before and I'd lost pretty well, but then I kind of went off of it and went back on. And you know the deal. I'm sure most of you have been in the same situation. So yes, March of 2020, March 3rd of 2020, I went into Weight Watchers for the first time was able to attend one live meeting before everything got shut down because of COVID. So then I was doing virtual meetings and I was doing really well. I was committed, I was tracking, and my goal with WW was to get the blue dots every day. And so I had to finagle things and work through how I was going to make it work for me, because that is the biggest thing that I have learned in my weight loss journey, is you have to make the program fit you. You don't try to fit the program, because if you do that, you're not being yourself, and once you go back to being yourself, you're going to fall off plan because you weren't really doing what you should have been doing. So for instance, I know that I am a evening snacker. I need my evening snacks. So what I did was I stockpiled snacks of sweet snacks, salty snacks, whatever kind of snacks that I knew I would want. Made sure they were all bite friendly or point friendly at that time, and always had stuff on hand. I would pre-package pretzels and chips and things like that. I would have little pudding snack packs that I could snack on. And what I would do is keep my earlier meals low bite, low point at that time, sorry. So that later, when I knew I'd want a snack, I would have points available to do that. So like I showed in one of my short and sweet videos, how I do my breakfast yogurt. It's only 2 bites, and that's what we do throughout the week, throughout the weekdays. Weekends, we're a little more relaxed. We'll have something more involved. And I will get to that also later in the food segment. And lunches would be like a sandwich with some thin sliced meats, like a 2 slices of bread would be 2 points. The meat I would use would be 2 points. I would maybe have some chips for 1 point. I would use mustard so that I didn't add any points. And I would have like a 5 or 6 point lunch to go with the 2 point breakfast. So that was 8 points, and I had like 34 at the time that I started, maybe more. I don't remember what I started with, but I made sure, knowing that I am a snacker, and mostly in the evenings, I made sure I fit the program to my way of eating. And that is my biggest takeaway and my biggest offering, I think, is to understand how you eat, what you would like, and just make that work within the program. Like I said, don't shut everything else out, deprive yourself just to fit in with the bites or points or whatever you're calculating, calories, whatever. Somebody else asked, did you lose your weight following WW? And I did lose most of it following WW. There was a period of time, maybe February, March, that there was a lot of conflict going on with the ambassadors that WW was accepting, the products they were promoting, and I just decided, for that reason, as well as my own financial reason, that I would leave WW and switch to iTrackBites. And I think I had probably like 25 to 30 pounds left to lose to reach my goal when I switched. And I switched to the iTrackBites Better Balance Plan, which is essentially the WW Blue plan, which I had been on. So it was basically no transition whatsoever. So, did I exercise? No, I did not. And the reason I didn't exercise is I really couldn't do much exercise. I do on occasion do YouTube videos with Leslie Sansone. They're walking videos. kind of fast-paced sometimes, and my body doesn't like certain movements, so I can't do it all the time. I do try to do some of that now, but to lose the weight, no. And I just recently watched Dee over at Dish with Dee talking about weight loss and exercise and how she didn't exercise. She doesn't like to exercise. I don't like to exercise. And her belief, which I totally agree with, that if you don't like to exercise, but you lose weight through exercise, once you come down from that and say, okay, I can let go of the exercise, your body's going to start piling weight back on because you're not expending the calories that you were. By losing my weight without exercising, I'm not going to change anything as far as my activity, except maybe get more activity on occasion than I did before. So, no, I did not exercise to lose any of the weight, and I did not have weight loss surgery. WW did help me lose most of it. Then iTrackBites helped to get the rest of it off and to help me maintain. Because I have found when I don't track, even though I'm at my goal range, I do have a range, not a goal weight. Now that I'm at my goal, I know I would be like, from previous experience, okay, I'm here. I've reached the destination. I can add on more things that I like, that I was missing. And that would have gotten me back into the old spiral of eating things I want, things I crave, usually being dissatisfied with them, and gaining weight back. So I have realized that I'm not going to a specific weight. I'm not going to a weight that somebody says I should be at. I'm going to a weight range. My range that I've given myself is 175 pounds to 185 pounds. I try to stay around 180, so I'm in the middle of the range, and it gives me a little leeway. Because your body's going to fluctuate. Your body from day to day, from minute to minute, from hour to hour, whatever, is going to fluctuate. So don't get focused on a set weight, that number, because once you get off that number, even by half a pound, you're going to panic. Give yourself a weight range, like a 10-pound weight range, and your target's kind of in the middle, but you have a little wiggle room for whatever, because it's also not a destination. It is a journey, and a lifelong journey. One of my problems was whenever I would say, I need to reach this weight, as I kind of hinted at a moment ago. Once I reach this weight, okay, I'm done. No, that's not the way it works. It's a journey, it's a lifelong journey, and if you give yourself that range, it's going to remind you that it's flexible. It's not going to be consistent. You're not going to have to stick to that one weight that you had in your mind. You have a weight range, and you're going to have to constantly keep balancing to stay in that. So it's a lifelong journey. Don't think once you get to your goal that it's over, because that could lead you back into the cycle of gaining again, and that's what I don't want for myself or for any of you. Now, that was very long-winded. Luckily, I answered 3 questions. I need to lose over 80 pounds, was on WW till COVID and no meetings. Canceled my subscription, wondering if iTrackBites are similar, and what's your opinion? I love iTrackBites. Do they have some flaws? Yes. Did WW have some flaws? Yes. But overall, I love that I can track. I love that I can track multiple things. You can have a secondary metric of calories or macros. So if you want to see where you are calorically, you can follow calories as well as your bites. A lot of the things that you need, like the recipe builder and some of the plans, like the Better Balance plan that I'm on, are part of the paid subscription. But it's like $35 for the year, as opposed to like $25 or whatever it was, 40 something, I think, with the meetings for WW a month. So it's definitely worth, in my opinion, it's definitely worth looking into iTrackBites. And I have said on this channel before some of the problems, like if you put something into the recipe builder that is 0 bites for you on your plan, it will sometimes add bites. So you have, but they do have the option of switching it to a 0 bite food. So there are ways around it, and I do mention that in another video that I will link down below in case anyone is interested in finding out what I'm talking about and how to do that. But overall, iTrackBites is definitely worth looking into. Financially, it's much better for me, especially now that I am, no, okay, that's going to answer another question, so no. But yes, iTrackBites is very similar. They do have, instead of the 3 plans that WW currently has, they have 6 in case you want to do carbs, count your carbs, in case you want to do keto. They have a variety that should fit almost any option that you're looking for. And they're very, very supportive. So I would definitely recommend iTrackBites. What kept you motivated through your weight loss? The number one thing. The number one thing that kept me motivated was my health. I just found out I was diabetic, type 2 diabetes. I was on blood pressure medications. I had to sleep with a CPAP mask on, which that took me a while to get used to because I'm extremely claustrophobic. And so my health was like the biggest thing, especially with the neuropathy and myopathy. I was having enough difficulty moving because of my nerves and muscles, and the weight was making it worse. So I knew for my health, for my movement, for my quality of life, I had to lose the weight, and that was my main motivation. And to that point, I am off my diabetes medication and no longer diabetic. I'm off my blood pressure medication, and I'm off my CPAP. So I have cleared a lot of the health issues simply by losing the weight. From someone with fibromyalgia and neuropathy, have you noticed any improvement in your condition since you lost weight? I have noticed a difference in my movement because I'm not having to try to move as much weight. I don't know if the condition itself has improved much. I still have little feeling in my feet, especially toward my toes. I still get very severe cramps randomly, so there's nothing that tells me, oh, here, this is what's going to cause a cramp. I could just be sitting there, I could stand up in the wrong way, and I suddenly get cramps they're kind of like earthquakes. The first one is extremely intense and horrible. And then there will be what I call the aftershocks, which will go through and be less and less severe until they finally ebb away. But I've also gotten more used to what was happening. In the early days, every time, like, I'll sometimes get severe cramps in my stomach muscles, and they're very painful, and I'd be like, I think I need to go to the hospital. But I've learned to just ride them out, and it will go away. So I've also gotten more accustomed to it. But as far as the myopathy and neuropathy itself, I think it's only improved in the fact that I can move more easily. Okay, we are off the weight loss questions, and now we're going into the personal questions. My question is, how long have you and Paul been together? How did you meet? Are you married? And I had a few people asking about that. So Paul and I have been together almost 22 years. It'll be 22. We met in 2000, and which makes it easy to remember. We met because I was living in Connecticut and Paul was living here in Massachusetts. And I was working at Mohegan Sun Casino, and I was working like the second shift, and I would get home at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And in order to unwind, I would go on the computer and check my email, check Facebook, or whatever I had going on at that time. And I would also sometimes look through the personals just to see who I could find out there. And I had scanned through, I was getting really tired, and I saw a picture of Paul, and something struck me about him, even though, oddly enough, he was not my type physically that I was normally drawn to. So I was like, I want to write to him, but I'm so tired. I'm just going to go to bed. But then I thought, the way these personal websites work, I might not find him again. So let me just send him a quick message. So I just quickly sent a message saying basically, hi, how are you doing? I'd love to talk sometime, but I'm really tired right now and I have to go to bed, but I wanted to connect with you. And he wrote back. We communicated through email for a couple of months before we actually met, and the rest is history. I moved up here with him probably after we were together about 4 years or so. We're not married. I did propose to him a few years ago, and I gave him a ring. But because of all of my medical issues, I decided, and he agreed, I don't want him to be responsible for anything that I might incur, like medical costs or things like that. So for that reason, I decided we're not going to legally be married. We've been together 22 years. We've lived together for, 18 of those years, 17? So we are, in essence, married, and I do sometimes refer to him as the hubby. But no, we're not officially married, and we won't be, just for that reason. Let's see, I was wondering, what part of the country do you reside? I love the wooded area that your porch is in. And someone else asked if those were woods behind you in a creek. So I took a little video clip, and I'm going to insert that here, showing a little bit more of what is around me. Okay, so one of the questions was about if this wooded area behind me was on a creek. It's actually on a bit of a pond. And there's some geese. I don't know if you can hear them crying out over there. They usually come up onto the lawn. But it's mostly woods around the house, and then a pond off to our side. There's a little island. You can't see it with all the trees in the way, but there's a little island out there. Some lily ponds, but it's a rather big lake. It goes, or pond, it goes all the way across into the next town, which we're on the border of, so it's not like a giant pond, but anyway, so that is the answer. It's not a creek, it's a pond, and yes, woods all around, except in the front, which is the main road. All right, next. So that is the basic area that I live in. And it is, as I've mentioned a couple of times already, we are living in Massachusetts, so we're in New England. I've lived in New England most of my life, except for a few years when I was young that we lived in New Jersey. Do you have any pets? A couple of people asked that. I do not have any pets. I haven't had pets for a very long time. And I do like animals, but I'm not a pet person. One thing is the financial aspect of it. It was too much for me to commit. I wouldn't want to have to always run home to a pet, to take care of a pet, to find somebody to watch them if I was going somewhere. So I do like animals. I am not a pet person. So hopefully that doesn't offend anyone. Jennifer, Lynn, and Bree, I know you people have your pets. But I just don't want to have pets and have that commitment. Paul's all the commitment I can handle, quite frankly. What are some of your hobbies or pastimes, especially outside of the kitchen? Well, my hobbies and pastimes have kind of dwindled since my myopathy and neuropathy. I would read constantly before, and this has nothing to do with the This has nothing to do with the myopathy or neuropathy. But for some reason, maybe 8 years ago, I just kind of fell off of reading. I will listen to audiobooks, but reading actual books, I just kind of fell away from, and I don't know why. I'd love to get back to it. It's not like I don't have time. I was also a big crafter, so Kim, over at A Girl and Her Phone, I totally get you. I have tons of stuff hiding in this house that when we can access it at some point, I will be clearing it out and maybe sending it Kim's way. I used to craft all the time. I would make all sorts of crafts for people for Christmas. I would paint ornaments. I would sew stockings for people, and Bree has received one of those stockings that I've made previously. I wasn't able to do it recently. And I also used to decorate cakes. I loved cake. I love baking, and I love decorating cakes and coming up with all sorts of things, ways of decorating something to make it special for family members usually. And maybe I will include some of those here as I'm talking so that you can see what I'm talking about. But since the neuropathy and myopathy, I can't do a lot of the things that I used to do. So now I am more into doing YouTube now, obviously, thanks to those who push me along, and watching true crime. I'm a big true crime addict. I listen to podcasts. But a lot of what I'm doing now, and it's not outside of the kitchen, but also revamping recipes. What's really started me into revamping recipes was even on the WW app, I'd find recipes and think, why is that 8 bites or 8 points, sorry. That could easily be lowered, but they stick with sugars, real sugars. They stick with real creams and milks and things like that typically. So I wanted to find other ways that I could get those points at that point, get those points down. So as I said, I could later snack. So that's not really outside of the kitchen, but outside of the kitchen right now, it's YouTube and true crime. And that's about it. What is your favorite vacation place? I'm not really a vacation person. I'm typically very introverted, and I love being home. I mentioned in a previous video that Paul and I, along with my mother and brother, years ago when we first started dating, took a trip to Ireland. And what we did was we landed in Shannon and then traveled down to Dublin where we would get our flight home. And I loved that because it wasn't the touristy places. I loved seeing the little shops. We did stop at touristy places. We kissed the Blarney Stone and things like that. But to see the little places, that's what I really like. I always thought that if I had the money to do so, I would buy a mobile home and just travel, not to the big places, but just the small towns and see different things like that. Get to see the people, not the sights, if you know what I mean. So that was one of my favorite vacations. Ireland was beautiful. I also loved Montreal. We went there one year before Christmas. But typically, I'm not a beach person. I'm not a travel person. So typically, if I had a vacation, I'd rather just be home. What did you teach? That is a kind of interesting story. When I was in college, I was majoring in English at first because I always wanted to be a writer. And then after a while I thought, I'm not going to be able to do anything with an English degree except teach, and I didn't want to teach. So I switched to psychology, figuring that as a writer, psychology would come in handy. And years later, when I moved up here to be with Paul, his aunt was working as a cafeteria worker in the school system here, and she got me an interview. I became an aide in the special ed department. Well, working in the school actually got me thinking that I had been wrong all those years ago when I said, all I can do is teach, and I don't want to do that. So I went and got my teaching certificate in English, and there were no openings in my school system for an English teacher at that time. But there was a new program that came into our school called Project Search. It takes students with special needs and puts them in a work environment in whatever community business your Project Search was able to work in. Ours happened to be in a hospital. So I had already been working in special ed as an aide, so they came to me knowing I had a teaching certificate and said, how about you head this program for us? And so I said, great. And so I did that for a few years until I started to notice the problems with my foot. And what that was I would be walking through the halls of the hospital and my foot would flop down on the floor. And I asked the guy I was working with, my friend David, who might be watching this, or his girlfriend Tina may, do you notice that? Have I always done that? Is that weird? And he said, yeah, that's odd. So anyways, I'm getting off track, which is typical for me. But so I was working in that program, and we would have students go through 3 different internships in the hospital to learn job skills. And the greatest thing about that job was to see them going from anxious students, anxious people, anxious workers, and blossoming and being like, I can do this, I can work, I can do these jobs. And just seeing the pride that they got from learning those skills was incredible. Now, the next question is, are you retired? And yes, that led to my retirement because of my disability, because I could no longer commit to work when my body was going to be suddenly ravaged in pain, or I was unable to move, or I would fall and not be able to get up. So yes, I did have to retire, and sadly, a teaching position opened up in the school system just as I had to retire. So there you have it. I lost out on that job, but now I have a new one. Meeting up with you people here on my channel. Let's see. Okay, were you close with your mom? I had mentioned something in one of my recent videos, one of my tags about my mother, and yes, we were very close. I was the oldest. So yeah, we were close. I do have younger siblings that I would often take care of. But my mother and I were probably the closest, and I think it's because we were kind of like the first two together. Especially once my father was out of the picture, she came to rely on me more. And he was out of the picture through divorce, not through dying. Although they have both passed on now. And let's see. Oh, this question. Who is your favorite sibling? Wonder who could have asked that question. Maybe my sister? Yeah, so my favorite sibling would be the one who doesn't ask me questions like that? No. All of my siblings are my favorite for different reasons. I don't have a favorite, even though I know certain people want me to name them as my favorite. But each one is my favorite for a different reason. So it's kind of like they all have their specialty, and that's what I like about them, if that makes sense. Okay, personal is over. Now we're on to food. What is a typical breakfast for you? I did do a video on my short and sweets that I mentioned before, showing the standard breakfast that I have during the weekdays. And that is yogurt, sometimes with some powdered peanut butter, just to bump up the flavor, maybe a few chips, Lily's chips, like pumpkin spice or white chocolate. Not enough to add a bite to it, but just enough to give me a little pop of flavor. And then we also chop up banana, blueberries. I don't chop up the blueberries, and strawberries and put those in. Top it with a little granola or Cheerios or All Bran, just to get a little texture in there. That's the typical weekday breakfast. But I do have a question of what is a go-to breakfast that does include cooking. And that's what I do on the weekends. On Saturdays, I do a no-track day. I got the idea from watching Bree over on her channel. She does no-track days on Fridays. Saturday was easier for me because it was a day that Paul wasn't working. If we wanted to go out, we could. So Saturday just turned out to be a better day for me to have a no-track day. So on those days, I will have maybe some French toast with real syrup or things like that. But if I'm tracking, which is on Sunday, I go back to tracking, I will have scrambled eggs for 0 bites, 2 strips of center cut bacon for 2 bites, and 2 pieces of toast. The bread that I use typically the Sara Lee 45, but I've used the other one from Aldi. I forget what the name of that is. I'll hopefully remember to put that down here. But that's 2 slices for 2 bites. So that's basically a 4-bite breakfast. And it's cooked. If I don't feel like doing eggs, I will do pancakes that I got from my friend Cammie, and I did share her video of her recipe for blueberry pancakes that I have then adapted into others. And those recipes can be found on my blog if you want to go check that out. The link is down below. But I will do pancakes with maybe some chicken sausage. So I always keep as I said before, I always keep my early meals, except for no track Saturday, lower bites, so that I can later have my snacks that I know I'm inevitably going to want to eat. What is your go-to meal on a busy day? If it's a really busy day, typically I don't really have too busy of a day being retired. But there are days that I don't feel like doing much. And a lot of times, like I said, my lunch will be like a quick little sandwich. I will sometimes put, instead of cheese, I will spread some of the, well, it is cheese, but the spreadable Laughing Cow cheese on both sides so I don't have to put any condiments on it, with a little of the lunch meat. If it's daytime, if it's for breakfast, especially on a weekend, and say we're gonna go somewhere, I will just scramble up some eggs real quick. And I do my bacon now like Jennifer Lynn does. I used to do it in a pan and it seemed to take forever. So what I do now is cook my bacon like Jennifer Lynn does in the microwave. I put down a double layer of paper towel on a plate, lay out the bacon, and then I will typically microwave it for the same number of minutes that there are slices of bacon, if that makes sense. So for 4 slices of bacon, I'd let it go for 4 minutes. But I've noticed when I did my recent BLT pasta salad and I needed to microwave some bacon, that called for 8 slices. I was afraid 8 minutes would be too much. And I think I was right, because it ended up 6 minutes was perfect. So I think the more slices, the less time you have to worry about it, which is kind of odd. But anyways, a quick microwaved bacon in a few minutes, that is definitely easy to do. Scramble up a couple of eggs, throw some toast in the toaster oven or toaster, and that is relatively quick. But there are also, sometimes I'll have one of my desserts, my low-bite desserts, or some of the muffins that I make, or if I have a grab and go, it's like one of the Pound Dropper cinnamon streusel muffins I recently did a video for. So there are options. If it's a weeknight, typically if it's busy or I've been stressed throughout the day, or sometimes I'll go shopping in the afternoon, and I, like my friend Jennifer Lynn, love to shop. And I'll just browse around the store and pick things up and find things. And I get back later than I expected. For dinner, I will just do some burgers, 96% lean burgers. 4 ounces is 3 bites on a keto bun that I get from Aldi for 1 bite. And then in the air fryer, I will fry up some sweet potato fries or some French fries. And those, I usually have about 3 to 4 bites worth of that. So that's like an 8-bite dinner. And it's relatively quick to come together. But also, if I know it's going to be a busy day, I will set the crock pot in the morning with maybe the bacon cheeseburger chili that I made on this channel, or Italian chicken. There's a recipe for Italian chicken. So things like that. If I know it's going to be a busy day, set stuff in the crock pot. A lot of it you can prep the night before and just throw it all in. But typically that's what I'll do, is either a crock pot if I know it's going to be busy, or if it's later busy, I will do like quick burgers, chicken burgers, something like that. Typically I cook everything from scratch, but on occasion I will like have fries or things like that from a bag. Okay, that was longer than I thought. What are your favorite kitchen tools to make cooking and baking easier for you? And I'm thinking this question means because of my disability. I don't really have special equipment. I do like to use a food processor if I'm having to process like a lot of vegetables. But typically it's simply just me and Paul, so I don't have a lot to prep. So typically I will just chop things with a knife. The air fryer has come in extremely handy, just to keep myself from frying things in oil. And baking things doesn't always give me that crispness that I like. That's not really to do with anything with a disability, but like I said, I didn't really change much except, and I showed this in, I believe, the blueberry cream cheese crumb bar recipe. Our oven door, when we renovated our kitchen, our oven door opens to the side, and if I can get a clip of that, I will insert that in here to show you what I'm talking about. That has been a godsend, because instead of pulling it down this way and having to try to reach over with my shaky hands and maybe touch something hot or drop something, I can open the door and get closer to put stuff in with less chance that I'm going to drop something or burn myself. So that was a big, big, big help in getting that door. And someone did comment that they were going to remodel and they never thought of doing something like that. And they're getting older and thought that would be perfect for them, make things easier than trying to reach over the oven. It was more expensive, I will tell you that, than a typical door, but I think it was well worth it. What do you do when you have a terrible case of the munchies? What I do is I give into it. I know that sounds wrong, but here's what I do. I know, like I said, that I'm going to want to snack at night. So I adjusted my bites, points, whatever, to allow for that in the evening. Sometimes those snacks aren't enough. Sometimes I'm just in a mood to be ravenous and go crazy and let myself off the leash, so to speak. So I do it. I give myself permission only every once in a while, like maybe every 2 weeks. And now that I've done that, it's not even that often. Maybe once a month I'll have that kind of feeling. But I will tell myself certain rules. I cannot pig out on high bite, high point things. I have to have what I have around the house. And the other rule is I will not feel guilty about it. That is probably the biggest thing that I could have allowed myself. Because what I would do previously, and I'm sure many of you do the same, is I would beat myself up mentally the next day for what I did to myself. That would make me feel so bad about myself that I would start eating and eating and eating to try to make myself feel better about eating. Kind of doesn't make sense, does it? But that's the way the mind works. So I have allowed myself, like I said, every 2 weeks I can have that moment, although it's not that often anymore, where I just let myself go. And I do not let myself feel guilt. And the other thing I do not allow is it to be a day-long thing. I will not allow myself to eat like that until after dinner. So that way I'm not eating that way throughout the day. I do have a period of time that I'm doing it, and I'm allowing it. I think that is the biggest thing that I can tell you is just, you're human. You are going to want to have a binge every now and then. This is a lifestyle. You're not going to go your whole life without wanting to overindulge once in a while. Allow yourself to do it and then move on. I allow myself those things, and I now wake up in the morning back on track. because I'm not feeling guilty, because I gave myself permission. I said, you can do this, but this is when you can do it. It's like with a kid. You give them rules, these are the guidelines, and you must follow them. I follow them, I give myself permission, I do it at night, so I'm not doing it throughout the day, and I do not allow myself to feel guilty. What is your dream dinner food-wise? Where would it be, and who would it be with? Paul and I love to go out to eat. Paul more so than me. I'm kind of wishy-washy about going out. I do like to go out, but I don't have favorite things or favorite like dream foods or things like that. I go by whatever strikes me at the moment. And so when we go out, I very seldom get the same thing unless it's something I really love. Like there's one restaurant that they have these Thai peanut wings that I love. So if we go there, I'll usually get that as an appetizer. Sometimes I can't even eat the dinner because of that, but I bring that home, divvy it up for a couple of meals. Anyway, so I don't really have a dream dinner because I don't have favorite foods. I'm very open to many things except seafood. No seafood here. And no raspberries. No raspberries. But aside from those two things, I go by my mood. So I don't have any definite dinner that I would like to have. Like if I had a final meal, if I were in prison for a final meal, I don't know what I would get. I think I would have to depend on what I was in the mood for at that time. Where would it be? It would not be in prison, I would hope. I do love eating in New York. I love going there. But see, that's the thing when I travel. I do like to sample the foods that I can't get anywhere else. So it could be anywhere. It could be any place, any food. But I would probably be with Paul. If it were someone famous, and it was like a dream fantasy thing of who would you have dinner with, I would love to have dinner with Stephen King, who is my writing idol. I've always wanted to be like him. I love his storytelling. So I would love to meet with him and pick his brain. Also, I would love to have dinner with two women who do my favorite podcast, My Favorite Murder, Georgia and Karen. I think it would be a great time to hang out with them, having dinner, and Karen doesn't drink, but maybe I would have a drink. Maybe I could talk Georgia into having one. But the ultimate, I think the ultimate would be if I could have dinner with my YouTube family, like Bree, Jennifer Lynn, Dee, Sandy, and Kim. The 6 of us got together. Now that would be something to see. I don't think we'd be able to record it because I don't think we'd be monetized for what might happen. But anyway, that is the answer, which is not really an answer. I'm sorry, but I don't really have favorites. I go with my mood. The last topic, YouTube. I'd like to know how you learn to produce and edit your videos. And the answer is YouTube. Once I decided, and actually I used a lot of YouTube videos to procrastinate starting my own channel because I was very anxious about doing it. I felt very awkward talking to a camera. And especially if anyone was around. So when I filmed the first video, and actually every video since then, it's just me and the camera. So I feel more comfortable. I think I'd be okay with Paul being here now if I were talking, as long as he wasn't making faces at me, which he sometimes will, just to try to get a reaction. But I would feel too awkward with other people watching me. So what I did was I just started investigating how to edit, what are free software that I can use, what are the different transitions. I just searched everything and went onto YouTube, and actually Jennifer Lynn gave me some great channels, Steve Cannell to watch, and Think Media, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other one, but mostly I just learned by watching videos. And there is one video, oh, and I cannot remember his name. I will leave it here because he actually gave you a file to use in the program that I use for editing, which is Shotcut, which is very basic, so it's easy for a beginner to get into. And he gave you files so you could follow along and do what he was doing as he was doing it. So I would watch his video, pause it, do it in Shotcut. And so I learned a lot that way. That was a great help. And I will leave that name here and like the link to the channel down below in the description box. But that was a big help. But YouTube was how I learned to do all of this. And now if I want to decide to try something new, like there was a video where I'd made a few mistakes and I thought, wouldn't it be funny if I could just rewind it? So I looked it up and found out that I could rewind it. And at the beginning of some video, recent video, I can't remember which one it is, maybe I'll remember and list it here. I did my flub, did a rewind, went into the next flub, and then into my intro. So, and that was all through YouTube. So YouTube has really helped me to get on YouTube. What are your top 3 to 5 recipe videos as far as YouTube views are concerned? And I had to look that up and I marked them down here. Number 1, with over 1,600 views, is my 0-bite 0-point cream cheese, which is a base for a lot of the other recipes that not a lot, but some of the other recipes like my blueberry cream cheese crumb bars. And that was also my introduction video where I told you a bit about myself. So that one's the number 1 video. Number 2 is the chewy oatmeal cookies, which is one of my favorites. And number 3 is light and fudgy brownies. So sweets definitely are up there. People like their sweets. I know I do. And if you've seen my videos where I do them, they're usually not small portions. They're pretty hefty portions, and I've finagled the recipes enough where I could do that and still keep it low bite. Number 4 was the recent one of chicken pot pie potato casserole. And I think a lot of that has to do with Sandy over at Let's Get Fit with Sandy and her husband Jim really liking it, and they endorsed the recipe, and I think a lot of people came over and gave that views after they shared their love of that recipe. So thank you, Sandy and Jim. And then the 5th one is the faux ricotta pasta that I modeled after an Italian grandma who does YouTube videos, and I will link that down below as well, her original recipe. But those are the top 5, and you can find those on the channel. I won't link them individually here. They're all on the channel. How did you meet Jennifer and Bree? Well, Bree I actually met first, and by met, I mean communicated through YouTube. When I started Weight Watchers, I started looking on YouTube to find videos, things that could help me to figure out what I was going to do. And I was in the suggestions, I saw a couple, Bree and Greg, who were keeping up with the Colemans at the time. And I thought, that's unusual to find a couple doing things, so I checked them out. And I would communicate through some of their, like, comment on their videos. And I remember one, I suggested, they were doing something with marshmallow fluff, and I suggested that they spray the measuring spoon with Pam and it'll come out much more easily. And then they thanked me in a video for that. And then we went back and forth, and I ended up joining Instagram actually so that I could follow Bree on Instagram. So I have Bree to thank for getting me on YouTube and on Instagram. So Bree, you are a social media queen. So that's how we met. We got close talking and stuff, and I sent them some treats for Christmas last Christmas that I had baked, because I love to bake, especially around the holidays, and give that as gifts. So I sent them an assortment of cookies and things, and we just have gotten close, but we have not yet officially met, not in person. We do have each other's phone numbers though, so we're getting there. And she has an open invitation to come stay here once she gets settled in at her new house. And Jennifer, basically the same kind of story. I found her on YouTube, and one of the first recipes that I commented on was she was doing some mini pecan and pumpkin pies using egg roll wrappers, wonton wrappers. And so I loved the recipe, and I commented, and she commented back. But we really connected when she was in a video talking about her granddaughter and her daughter and her daughter's wife. And I was just like, she just said it so casually. It was just, this is her life. This is normal. And I wrote to her and told her how much I appreciated her saying so casually and so openly that her daughter has a wife. And that started a communication between the two of us. And we've found through our communications, we have a lot in common. And so we have gotten extremely close as well, although we have not exchanged actual phone numbers yet, though we will probably get there. I think probably shortly after this. But that's, and again, I haven't officially met Jennifer, but I would love to. And the final question, is it possible in the future that you can do some diabetic-friendly recipe videos? I did, after I got this question, because I thought, sorry, I moved out of camera, I think. I thought I was doing mostly diabetic friendly, maybe not purely diabetic, but that it was friendly for diabetics, the things I was doing. And for the most part, I think that is true, except where I use, say, rice or the pasta that I use. Instead of the white rice or the white pasta, switching to whole grains is probably the only change I would make to any of the recipes that I do to make it more diabetic friendly from what I was researching. A lot of the low bite foods, like fruits, that don't have a lot of sugar, I'm already using, like blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, which we don't talk about, peaches, things like that, I already use in some of my recipes. So I will look through I do have 2 diabetic cookbooks because my mother was diabetic and she gave me those before she passed away. So I will look through those and see if there are any recipes that I can share that will specifically be diabetic friendly. But I think for the most part, as long as you change any white pastas or breads or whatever to whole grains, I think that will help a lot. Also the konjac noodles, konjac rice that I did a short video on a couple of weeks ago. That's supposed to be very diabetic friendly because it makes you feel full and it helps slow your digestion. So that might be something to look into as well. So that ends, finally. I'm sure many of you are like, this was the longest video in history. Anyway, this ends the Ask Me Anything video. I believe I answered everyone's questions to the best of my ability, maybe too much. We'll see how much I can edit this down to. But again, I want to thank all of you for subscribing to my channel. I really, really appreciate all of the support that I've gotten, all of the kind words that I've gotten, all of the feedback. It's just been crazy that I was so terrified of doing this, of putting myself out there, of making myself look foolish, and that it was so well received. I really, truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate all of you. But here's to my next 1,000. And we'll see what happens from there. If you would, please give this video a like. Subscribe down below if you have not already. And also hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video like this one, which is going to be on a Sunday, not on my typical Wednesday or Friday. And also share some of my videos. If you find a recipe that you think someone would like, please share it on Facebook, on Instagram, whatever. And speaking of Instagram, you can join me over there. I will leave my handle here. And on Facebook, I have 2 Facebook groups. One is just me, it's Recipes with Roy, and I'll show that here. And the other one, as many of you probably know, I am co-admin on with Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel, as well as Bree Coleman from Balancing Life with Bree. We are all the co-admins of Finding Our Way, WEIGH. So you can join us there. It's a great group of people on those Facebook groups. Lots of tips, tricks, recipes, what I eat in a day kind of things going on there. So if you're looking for support, those are great groups to join and reach out for some support, some encouragement, some tips, some tricks. Now, speaking of tips and tricks, I am going to steal a little trick from Jennifer Lynn. And if you have reached the end of this video, which I truly, truly appreciate, and I am suddenly being blinded by the sun that came out from behind some trees. Actually, I was going to do a rainbow, but let's do a sun emoji. If you've reached this far into my video, give me a blinding sun emoji down in the comment section so I know you reached the end and I know you are a true believer. Once again, I truly, truly appreciate every single one of you for joining me on this journey. And if you have any other questions that I did not answer, feel free to leave those in the comment box below. If anything was confusing, just leave it down below. I respond to every comment that I get, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. I really honestly appreciate you helping me to reach this benchmark in a very short amount of time, and I couldn't be happier that this is going the way it is. So I will leave you there. This has been long enough, hasn't it? And until next time, when it's much shorter, bye.